Well, welcome again. Terence South speaking about line of duty. The last time we spoke, we were just about to leave the Falkland Islands after the conflict in 1982. What happened was the Royal Marines and the paratroopers were to go and the engineers were to be left behind. And our commanding officer didn't agree with that, and come hell or high water, he wanted us all to go home together. After all, we deserved the homecoming that everybody else did because we'd been part of it. But senior people wanted the engineers to stay because they were the ones responsible for clearing the minefields. They were the ones who had the experience. However, these men were tired and they needed a rest. And fatigue, battle fatigue, is something that needed to be considered, because they not only undertook the engineering tasks required in minefields and neutralising bombs and all the other things that engineers need to do, they'd been involved very often in the fighting with the infantry. So they'd fought two different wars, same men. However, what happened was that as soon as war finishes, what kicks in is the Geneva Convention. What the laws as to what you can do and what you can't do. And being engineers, what we'd managed to do was find some engineers among the Argentinians who really wanted to cooperate. And they wanted to work with us, not necessarily join us, just work with us for better conditions. So we found these guys a house, we found them some food, they could live on their own, they could live together. So what, they were helping us. All the help that these guys who'd been our enemy yesterday and our friends today, they were saving people losing arms and legs. Because what they helped us to do was look at this map and say, this is where the minefield is, and your map, it's actually there. And they would show us where we'd interpreted their map rightly or wrongly, and so it was a real saviour for us. And so we went out one day with a few Argentinian engineers. There's about 6 of us, and we had with us a guy, senior guy again, from the Royal Navy, who'd been on a warship for the whole of the conflict and now wanted to be on shore and be part of it. We were there and just went out, and these guys are saying, that minefield there? Right. And so as soon as the minefield's there, we can't put these lads' life in danger at all. We've got to do the business, go and do the work and clear the minefield and find a path and mark it. And they're just going to help us, direct us to where to go. Anyway, we get there and we've got the map. And this guy's like, no, it's over there. And this guy's giving us Argentinian guys giving us all these instructions. And we don't speak the language, we don't have an interpreter there, we're trying to use the maps and pens and papers. And this Argentinian guy just goes off into the minefield. This guy from the Royal Navy sees his pension go down the tube. It's like, what are you doing? No, stop him, stop him. I'm not going in there. And so what actually happened was he went and he got this spade and he's banging away. Boom, boom, boom. I could, God, he's going to set a mine off. No. What the guy was trying to tell us was, the day they were supposed to lay that minefield, it was raining. And they didn't do it, although they put it on the map. They left him in the box and just buried the box. And he was looking for the box for all the mines in. It's not a minefield, they're all still in the box. I was like, wow. But just think about it. We could have spent days and days and days saying there's no minefield here, it's a complete whitewash, it's a load of lies, this map. And sat in this box is all these explosives. And this guy went and helped us. And it just shows you really, you know, these guys were conscripts. They weren't professional at all. If that had been the British Army and somebody said the minefield goes in there or whatever happens there, you do it. These guys hadn't. And so we get back, we're all really happy, apart from the guy from the Royal Navy who's seen his career go down the tube because we couldn't control this Argentinian engineer who was turned out to be the saviour of the day. But it's silly things like that happen to you, and you're like, you know, again, it was like, if we'd had an interpreter, if we'd been able to speak. And so it was my first time, again, going out where you've got these two languages and you're not only able to speak. Culture didn't get it across. Hand signals didn't get it across. And so languages and communication after the Falklands was a huge thing for me. And it was like getting into education. So anyway, we comes back from the Falklands, we sails back, takes weeks. And at that time, you then understand that some lads had suffered from it. It changed them in different ways about what had happened. Some had matured, some had lost weight, some had put weight on. 90% of them had lost weight. But we get back home, there's a huge fanfare. Everybody's glad to see you. We get back to Plymouth and we enjoying life, packing our bags, accounting for everything, getting back into our routine. Over about 10 days, then it's time to go home. And the whole of the country is waiting for their local servicemen to come home. So I drives home, drives into the street. I hired a car. There was 4 guys in the car. I dropped the first one off. The street was absolute mayhem waiting for him to come home. Everybody was cheering, loving him, kissing him, hugging him, banging on the car, and off I went, dropped the next one off, then the next one off. And I got to my street and I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I've done it 3 times already. And so I went in the street, the back way, and parked my car outside the house at the little side road. And not a lot of people would see me come in. And my mum and dad made me walk back out into the front street and say hello to everybody, and people hugging and kissing and saying hello and glad to see you back, and back into the house, and the house was full and the party was ongoing, and you know, it was great. And after a few days, everything calmed down. And it's times like that when you're by yourself and you've come down, your head starts to think about what you've been through, what you've done, the toll on your body, the toll on your head, about where you are, what space you're in. And so what we'd done was everybody had shared phone numbers before we'd left. So we started talking to each other, and we're all in the same situation. And unfortunately, life being what it is, everybody was asking everybody the same question. Did you kill anybody? Did you kill anybody? What was it like? Well, the one thing you want to do when you come home is forget about it. And the one thing everybody wanted to do was remind you about what happened. And then some strange characters come up and talk to you. There was a huge club in Sunderland called the Farringdon Working Men's Club. And I went in there and people spoke to me I didn't know. And they were all servicemen who'd been in the Second World War, a lot of them. And it was like, all right, son, how are you doing? And they were asking real good questions. How are you? How's it going to affect you? You can come and, if you have any problems, you can come and talk to me. You know where I live. I live on the corner, I'm up the road, I'll watch you any time of the day. And these people, old men, were saying things like, any time of the day and night, just come and knock on my door and I'll be there for you. Guys who'd been in conflict, Second World War, understood where you were and what you were doing, where your head was. So anyway, we'll go back to talking among friends I'd been there with, and we were talking to each other by phone, and eventually a couple of them arrived at my house in their car. And we went down to the Sunderland town centre, we went into Hayes Travel and said to the girl, I want to go on holiday and I want to go now. And this girl behind the counter saying, my God, I've always wondered if anybody would come in and say that. So we got a flight out of Manchester that afternoon and flew to Benidorm in Spain, where we holidayed and had a great time. Just 3 lads going there, having a drink, quiet, doing our own thing, and enjoyed ourselves. But we had 6 weeks off, so it was good, but it was time to go back. And when we went back, shall we say, a lot of people were very different. You know, experiences people had had, things they'd done, things that had happened at home that they couldn't cope with. Some people had actually gone back to camp early, so you had 6 weeks off. Some guys had actually gone back after 4 weeks, 5 weeks, because they just wanted to be among their friends again. That's why this bonding comes into it. So my time in the army after the Falklands was good. I was promoted again, thoroughly enjoyed life, moved on through engineering, went to work in Canada, spent a lot of time in Canada, and one of the jobs we got there was building recovering a World War II bombing range, because the ground was really soft. A lot of bombs hadn't gone off, they'd just gone into soft ground. We had to go in, extract them, neutralise them so they could use the land. And that was a really good job, 4 to 6 months, absolutely class. Again, we were using our Arctic experience of working in really cold weather, because you can walk really across the soft ground and when it freezes. So I spent another 2-3 years in the army and then out. Enough. And coming out of the army, I went into engineering and worked for a company that repaired bridges. So that was a big change. A big change for me. So that repairing bridges, I would go anywhere, and that was different. See, you'd brought a lot of your military bearing into a civilian company, and people were saying, you'll go there for 3 weeks. Yep. I've been away for 3 months, 4 months at a time. Why would it worry me going somewhere for 3 weeks? So I was quickly promoted there because I was always on site, could do the job. And next thing you know, I'm traveling around Europe with the managing director, a bit like my old commanding officer, understanding what each other needed, getting the job done, finishing the job, and then coming away. Real good team. And then in 1990, what would be about 93, I was asked to go to China. So in 93, went to China, and again this language thing hit me, like, wow, I've got to learn this. And when I seen China in 1993, I decided this country's going somewhere, it's developing. The education that people had was phenomenal. But we hadn't seen it in the West until you actually went into China. So I was working in the city of Guangzhou for a couple of months. And what I saw there was a developing country, people hungry for information, not necessarily rich people, just thousands of them. It was busy 24 hours a day because you couldn't move during the day. So people worked at night and moved trucks at night and moved equipment and food, everything moved during the night that was of any size. And so you then seen the seeds of China. And little did I know, at that stage I would spend in all 23 years living there. But that wasn't to be the case starting in 1993 because I finished the job and then we moved off. I went back to the UK, someone else was sent. It was a management decision because I was needed elsewhere. And so 6 months later, I find myself working in Russia. And that was totally different. Again, I got my head in my books. I went to night school. I went to Russia for 3 years, every year, for 3 consecutive years. I went for 4 months. And I worked there from sort of end of September, October, November, maybe into December. And Russia was fantastic. We worked just outside Red Square on a big bridge called Moskvovetsky Most. And we worked for a company called Moskva Gormost. And this was, I was working for the local government. And it was unbelievable because there was lots of things going on and nobody did anything about it. You say, that can't be legal. But the people there in Russia were so restricted because one day we were working for the government and they said, right, we need you to go to the other side of Moscow to look at this bridge. Right. So they gave us a police car. So he gets in this police car and goes to the other side of Moscow, and coming back will get stopped. So, why? The police were very interested that this Russian policeman had two English guys in the back of the car. But believe it or not, a police car, they knew it by the number plate, couldn't go from one side of the city to the other. Even police cars had areas that they could live in and work. And so you got to understand that this one-party state was very different to what you were used to. So it's really funny because we're working on Moskvovetsky Most, and below it is the garages for the Public Security Bureau or the Secret Police. And it's a huge bridge, river in the middle, and there's two arches. And so we cuts out to put a new expansion joint in, and looking down through the gap, we can see BMWs and Mercedes. Wow. We'll have to go down and talk to the guy and tell him to move all the cars, because as we're digging this new expansion joint in the bridge, which is actually a gap so rocks can fall through, he'll have to move all those cars away. So I guess grabs the interpreter, Sergey, we'll have to go down and talk to him. I'm not going down there. Sergey, we've got to talk to this guy. So grabs the interpreter and down we go, we knocks on the door. Talk to this guy. Look, you've got to move the cars. Why? Sergey's trying to tell him. And then all of a sudden, the guy comes back and says to us, don't worry about the bricks, it's not a problem. What? The cars are bulletproof. But no, it'll take the paint off, for God's sake. Don't. So that was really funny, that. The cars are bulletproof, the rocks will not hurt them. So in the end, we had to stop the work, get somebody more senior who understood what was going on. But we worked on that bridge, and Moskvovetsky Most is the big bridge, sits outside Krasna Ploshchad, which is the Kremlin. And after we finished that bridge, there was a German guy landed an aeroplane on it and taxied into Red Square. And that was the whole of the Russian Air Force. He'd gone round them and landed in Moscow on our bridge that we'd made nice and level and smooth. And what the Russians did was they put wires across and put electric bus route on it so nobody could ever do it again. It was really clever. So that was sort of 95. That was me. I'd gone from England, across to China, up into Moscow, and that was me for 95, 96, 97. Every year, go to Moscow to work. So I'd go to Moscow, get all the equipment ready, and then we worked on the Moscow-St. Petersburg link. So we would drive out of Moscow and drive up towards St. Petersburg, doing every bridge. And what we've seen, and huge bridges and infrastructure going on, was absolutely phenomenal. But health and safety, being what it is in Russia, it's very different from the UK. And so I decided that the men knew enough, they knew what to do. Very often I was just the guy that got them through the politics of this is the way it's got to be done. They had to become stronger and do it themselves. And I decided working like 500-600 kilometers outside Moscow wasn't safe. There wasn't a hospital nearby. I didn't like the look of the local medical establishments. So it was time for me to go home. So I came home from Russia in 97. And within a few weeks, the boss man said, will you go back to China? So I went back to China in 1998 and landed in Guangzhou in Baiyun Airport, which was in the middle of the city. And so, being a team player, always trying to sort things out, being an organised kind of guy, it wasn't very long till I found a pub, got my life in order. I found an English pub in the middle of a Chinese city, which was actually only 200 yards from my house. I had a nice little apartment, which is just 2 beds, great, all I needed. And we were going to build this road. 37.5 kilometers of elevated road in a city centre in China, and it was going to be done in a year and a half. Unbelievable. It's called Guangzhou Inner Ring Road, and it was fantastic. The teamwork, the camaraderie, working with these Chinese guys, training them, was something different. We'll go on to that in the future. So anyway, I'd like to thank you again for listening, and I will see you again. Thank you for watching.